Hi, everybody. Welcome to another SaaS on the Street, live from the London studios. I'm your host, Simon Small, and today we have a fantastic discussion lined up all about technology impacting climate emergency. So we're going to talk to Richard Muscat, who's based in Scotland and has a fantastic podcast that talks to entrepreneurs who are got software as a service companies that are impacting the climate emergency. And he's also working on his own SaaS business. So we're going to get into that in just a moment. Join me in just a few seconds. Hi, Richard. Welcome.
Hi there, Simon. Thank you for having me.
Great to see you. And you're coming in from sunny Scotland?
Sunny Scotland, yes. Northeast, just outside of Aberdeen. It was actually sunny today.
Aberdeen's a bit of my old stomping ground. I love the university library cube.
Oh, yes.
Stands out on the horizon, doesn't it?
It does. It was always the thing my daughter would sort of like get excited about when arriving back home because we lived quite close.
Right. To see the cube.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, actually, we've got me on the red frame here. I'm all in yellow, the yellow background. I'll go over there. But hang on, I need to switch over, so I'll jump over on that side with the hosted. There we go. Okay. So we're in the right place, the right time. Thank you for joining me. So Fatal Error is a podcast that you began, one of the very first ones that focused on, and there haven't been many, that focused on SaaS companies impacting the climate change, or impacting the climate emergency.
Mm-hmm.
Did you just wake up one morning and go, I've got to do this. I've been thinking about it for so long. I've got to get it done.
Yeah, more or less. It was one evening rather than one morning.
Right.
But not very far away from what you're saying. I had been thinking about it for a while. The reason I thought of a podcast is because I wanted to speak to people running companies, and they tend to be more interested in talking to maybe somebody if it's a podcast rather than just a one-to-one chat. But I had been mulling it over for a few weeks or a couple of months, and I remember I was away one thing on a work trip with a client, and I was just sitting in my hotel room or on the balcony rather one evening, and I said, you know what? What am I waiting for? And I had this big list of potential prospects or for guests. And I just fired off the email, shut my laptop, and went for a swim. It was in summer in Greece, so it was good for a swim. And yeah, that's how it's kind of started, and the response was great. Actually, a lot of people were immediately interested in having a conversation about it.
Good, and so you now have a whole host of friends in that space who are doing important work. What did you did one series and that was all on the technology entrepreneurs, and then the second series you went more into just entrepreneurs, didn't have to be a foundation.
Well, the first batch, the first series, they're in batched, grouped in series because it was more around my schedule, so like I had time for a few, and I just said, well, that's the end of series one, I need a break now. But the first batch were more with pretty much any technology entrepreneur, and it was more of a conversation around how climate work, the climate emergency, the situation and so on is perceived by people running software companies. Almost any software company kind of did was okay for me to talk to at the time. In fact, most of them didn't really have any overlap with climate work, except that maybe they have an interest. Then I began focusing a bit more on organizations who were very specifically trying to do something in the area. So, for example, energy companies, conversation, and people who are trying to build software to tackle the problem or doing some kind of activism.
Right. And what did you find with any common themes through the software companies that were tackling the climate emergency?
Yeah, there's a few common themes, I think. So for companies who are doing something, tackling it, there's often a kind of an internal conflict that I've noticed and I've experienced myself of, is it okay to profit from something that is, traditionally been the sort of something that charities are focused on, right? Or public bodies or things like that. And that's something that a lot of people have spoken to me about. We've discussed it in a few of the episodes specifically. And it's a tough one because actually there's nothing wrong with making a profit from doing something good. It kind of speaks to how conditioned we've become to expecting that if you're making a profit, you're doing something bad. In a sense, I think we'd all be much better off theoretically if everybody was making a profit from something good. The hard bit comes in how you structure things in your company or your organization, both legally and culturally, so that the profits you're making are being invested in what you believe are the right things. So that's one thing. The other thing that I've seen quite often with founders or people working in the space is that there's a lot of ups and downs involved. Once you get your head into this space, it can be a very depressing topic. Sorry to open with this, but it can be because if you believe the worst case scenarios, they're pretty bad, and you often feel like, well, there's reason for hope. We're doing something good, but is my contribution feels so small, right? And so people go through a lot of ups and downs with how they're feeling about the point of the work, whether it's getting anywhere, whether this is actually going to make an impact.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating. Both of those are fascinating themes, aren't they? Because there's that resistance from society, and I believe there's a resistance from society, this inertia to any software. Like anything you put out there, very rarely that it just gets, hey, this is what we've all been waiting for, and it just gets taken up, right? And that force is hard on any company. But if you've got the climate emergency, this is my purpose, right at the heart of what you're doing, and you're building out from that, and you feel like the profit is going to be, perhaps contrary to the purpose. We're all making money off this planet. I'm just looking at I'm looking at the screen, which is beautiful because it's nature, right?
Yeah.
But it's probably, climatically, that's probably not a great. That's not.
What you mean? Yeah.
I saw someone on your post saying, "Yeah, but could you not have so much LED or something in the background because it just promotes the use of electronics?" And I was thinking about getting a massive LCD display wall behind me, so I do a lot of training for SaaS founders and CEOs. So I was going to put all of these. Have 100 people in shop, in little windows, and it costs a fortune. And it's only when I saw someone putting a little comment on your thing about something to do with your backgrounds and could you dim it down so there's not so much light emitting, and I was like, holy crap, what would they think about like a wall of LCD panels?
Yeah.
You know.
And that's one of the things that when you start sort of looking at this issue, you kind of see it everywhere. You can kind of become a bit of a pain to yourself in some respects, but it's a bit like I've worked a lot as a, say, user interface or user experience designer, and I've worked with a lot of designers. And one of the things designers tend to do is whatever bit of software they're playing with or using or experimenting with, they're constantly picking holes in it. Like, oh, that copy is terrible. Oh, that button should be left aligned a bit more, or this or that or the other. And you sort of feel like, oh my God, can you ever enjoy using a piece of software without complaining about how it's designed?
Right.
And this becomes the same thing. It's like once you start thinking about how energy is being used and lost and conserved, and this, you sort of see it everywhere. How much brightness your website is using, how much energy your light bulb is emitting or consuming, and so on and so forth.
So tell me about the brightness.
Well, the first time I actually came across that concept was when I interviewed a guy called James Christie. He organizes a conference called Sustainable UX. It's been remote since before COVID. And it's when we got on a Zoom call, his video was all black and white. He has like a filter for it. And obviously I asked him about that to sort of like, what's going on. And color and brightness use up more energy in two ways. One is that your monitor is using more energy to emit it. And also, if you're transmitting video or images and so on, they're larger files, so you're transmitting more. You're using more electricity to transmit a color video versus a black and white. Because of the way they're compressed and so on. I don't know the technicalities. But it sounds like a small thing, but when you think about the sheer volume of photos and videos, that I saw a stat from Google Photos recently about something like 23 million new photos a week stored in Google Photos, and that's why they're changing their storage policy. That was the email was about that I received. You just think about that. It might be even more. I might be underselling. It might be more than 23 million. I don't know, but it's the sheer volume of energy that's used to transmit, download, store, and display all those images and videos really adds up. One of the big stats that people in this space talk about is how the web, the carbon footprint of the web, because of its energy, is now way larger than that of global air travel. We always think of air travel as being one of the biggest polluters, which it is. But now we are actually bigger polluters.
Yeah, I remember. I don't know when it was. Maybe 10 years ago. Just kind of ruminating on the fact that when you send an email, it was going to a data center that was consuming electricity, and the email was a pollutant, and I hadn't read anything about it. It was just like, well, of course that data center is just getting bigger and bigger. And my piece is a bit of landfill in the data center.
Yeah.
Because of that, theoretically, because I have a can of soft drink and I crush it up and I put it in the rubbish, and the rubbish goes into landfill. Theoretically, well, actually, that adds to it. Theoretically, that landfill needs more space because of my little one can. But isn't it interesting that if we go down this rabbit hole for a minute, that the biggest issue I have is data loss. And I think a lot of people have this issue. Like it's common that you hear someone losing their data, and part of that is if you're an Apple user, you might use iCloud, but that's not always reliable. I've had an iCloud failure and I lost everything. I think it was switching countries and so on. I've had I have this thing called SugarSync that backed up every device. Lost all my data. That was my fault because I didn't renew the credit card. But still, it was a massive sort of data injury to me, or memory. It's like if your house gets flooded and you just lose everything.
Exactly.
You got to start again, right? You get over it, get on with your life, and so then you become more paranoid about losing your stuff. So I've got Google Drive, I've got iCloud, I've got Dropbox.
Yeah.
I've got this bloody time capsule here, and all of it is trying to, which I haven't.
Yeah.
I haven't connected up. 2 terabytes I haven't connected up. And all of it is just trying to retain this data because I'd rather have it than lose it. And some of it's important, but obviously if there was a data catastrophe, then I just start all over again. And it's also hard to find stuff. So I just keep buying more and more storage on more platforms and praying that I won't have a loss. The last thing that I'm conscious of is my footprint, because I'm paying for that footprint. You know what I mean?
How do you mean you're paying for it? You mean you expect those companies to sort it out?
I just mean because it's a financial. It's like paying for landfill. It's like I'm buying some spell or buying a lockup. Lockup garage.
I know. The true thing is, this is not necessarily a widely shared opinion, perhaps, but you're able to buy all those things because you're not paying the true costs. Because the cost of this, the environmental cost of all the storage services and devices you're using is not actually built into what you're paying, because it's not accounted for. People don't care. It's not there. Dropbox is not pricing its things based on being properly carbon neutral or positive. The example used about storage space, right? A physical storage space. You wouldn't afford it, right? So if you were living in, say, New York and you needed storage space, it comes at a very high premium, right? And the more you need, the less you wouldn't afford it, right? And there's a problem that things aren't priced properly. Many people are not paying the right price, and I don't mean to blame the end user. At the end of the day, if something costs $1, you pay $1. Why pay more? But when something is too affordable, there's often a situation where somebody somewhere is losing out or being exploited or something along those lines. When you get super cheap fruit from the other side of the world in your supermarket here, for cut prices, somebody in that chain is being exploited, or somebody somewhere is not paying the right price for something.
Yeah, although what's also happening is that the pricing, the costs of the actual computing power is coming down, according to law. So that's kind of coming down, and yet they get you on a kind of a flat rate. So there's and the other aspect is they want you in their ecosystem.
Yeah.
So they'll give you free Gmail. I mean, what's my Gmail storage? It's crazy, right? You spend,
I don't know how much it is, but yeah.
I mean, on my personal Gmail, I have 65,000 unread emails because I just don't read everything. I just, I just.
Yeah.
I just get. It's not like 65,000 people get a hold of it. amount of junk that I
Yeah.
subscribe to that's in my inbox.
Oh, that gives me the shivers though, because I'm the kind of person who likes no unread emails at all. So just the thought of having 65,000 there freaks me out.
My accounts person hates it too. That's why I turn all the alerts off on my phone. I can never, I can't look at like unread messages, and I have to hide it if I'm doing something online because I don't want anyone to go, oh my gosh, you've got 65,523 emails. But yeah, I mean, look, that Gmail is just a gift, right? Everybody's giving email and giving you more and more free storage. And
it's what you're giving back.
Ecosystem.
Yeah, it's always, you know, I sort of, you know, we're talking about this stuff from an environmental perspective, but very often I found the other theme that I found, I suppose, is that this stuff is very interlinked with other societal issues. Like a company that doesn't care about its environmental footprint tends to not care about your privacy or about other ethical things. You know, there's like it's a package deal. When somebody really cares about, for example, your companies who really care about climate, for example, you tend to find that, for example, they also care about diversity and inclusion in a meaningful way, right? Or they care about your privacy in how they use that data in a meaningful way. I mean, they care in a meaningful way, not just lip service. And you know, when you use the Gmail example, and the thing is with Gmail, you know, as we all do, it's Gmail, but Gmail is the bait on the hook, right? You're the fish. You're being used. And including myself, right? I'm not sort of, you know, this is not new kind of things, but you know, the whole ecosystem is built on learning about what you do and selling your stuff. That's what it is. And the profitability of the ad for Google, the multitude of ads, especially that they charge for, far outweigh the storage costs. Right, of whatever it is that you're using.
Yes.
But that's also because the storage costs are not actually representative of the true cost of those devices and the true cost of running them from an environmental point of view, right? A lot of controversies about how lithium, for example, is mined for the batteries that we use to power this conversation. For instance, people are essentially it's exploitation, right? And our nice sort of glossy screens without, you know, any kind of hide all of that. You don't see the lithium miner being exploited when you buy an Apple or Dell or whatever laptop. It's not there.
Yeah, I mean, my ethos at the moment is just to get the best tools for the job.
Yes,
and that takes a lot to get your mind into, you know, like if I was building a house, I would want the right hammer, I want the right saw, I'd want the right digger. I don't want something that's going to break down. I don't want something that's going to get on the building site and this digger won't, you know, start when I want. And so my big thing has been to get on top of my own ideas about depreciation and financial wastage, and go, hang on, the wastage is if I can't get productive immediately to get the things done. That's the big wastage. And being at the forefront of the new products, that gets me productive. So I would, if I was in a climate emergency SaaS business, I would separate out, unfortunately, this is just my current thinking.
Of course.
You can rip it to shreds, but I would just like you can partition a hard drive. I just go, okay, I'm going to get the best tools so that I can make an impact in the most productive way possible.
Yeah.
And until there's a choice of sustainable tools, I'm just going to get the best ones that I can get.
Well, yes and no. I'm definitely not going to rip that to shreds. I mean, I'd be a hypocrite, first of all, because I use a lot of these devices myself, as an example. And I have never been, and don't anticipate being, one of those people who, for example, are like sort of, let's say, extremist activists of like, well, we shouldn't buy any of this stuff or go back to a simpler life or all that kind of stuff. I love technology. I love computers. I love coding. We mentioned it before. I don't code very much or very well, but I love it. It's exciting.
Yeah.
I don't want to sort of turn the clock back on technology or anything like that. But that doesn't mean that I can't acknowledge the fact that it's being done badly. We've had this conversation a few maybe decades ago, where the thing of like cheap fashion, for example, how that's produced, and the kind of like, kids in China or wherever, and that you're making a choice at that point. You're like, well, if I buy my clothes from blah, I won't mention any brand names because I don't know the right or wrong ones, to be honest. Well, then I know that I am exploiting somebody, essentially. And if I choose to buy a device that doesn't adhere to certain sort of environmental or ethical kind of standards, then I am supporting that exploitation. Now, I might be doing it because I don't have a choice, right? And especially if you're maybe doing something valuable with that device, then you shouldn't kind of like beat yourself up about it. But there's a difference between knowingly doing it and then being aware of when there's a choice and being able to maybe switch or something, to being either blissfully ignorant or not caring, right? So I would never make somebody... I don't think guilt is a very productive feeling, generally speaking, but it's good to be aware, and maybe you don't need a new device every few months. The productivity gains are minor.
I don't think yeah. I mean, I'd struggle to find someone that gets a new device every few months. But
I used to work for a company that replaced people's equipment every 18 months, right? And it was like a perk that you get a brand new device, brand new laptop, right? Every 18 or 24 months. I think 18 months was the official policy. And that's frankly not necessary. That's a huge waste. It's an employee perk, like when you add that little cost to a salary, it's nothing for a profitable company. But you're not getting any productivity gains as a company. 18 months, a good laptop is still very good, I think.
Yeah. Here's Tim Alore saying, so it's good that my phone and PC display is always on dark mode. It's a question.
Oh, right. Sorry, I wasn't seeing the... it's from what I hear. I'm not an expert on the actual sort of mathematics of it, but yes, it's you're using less energy. It's as simple as that.
The other aspect is like when you go back to the days of the film camera. I can't even open this. Don't know forgotten how it works.
I'm not sure I'd manage myself. Yeah.
The film camera, the old telephone, the record player with the vinyl, the CDs, the cassette tapes. We have stripped out so much physical into the digital, right? Mm-hmm. So there's so much. There's so. Imagine if we were all buying CDs or records through the mail, or driving in our cars to go to the shop, to park, to go to the record store to get those albums. All of that is now kind of compressed into Spotify and so that that does represent a lot of, as you say, kind of exploitation and resources, scarce resources.
Yeah.
But this thing's actually going to disappear as well. So we're on this kind of curve where the problem that we're facing is going to vamoosh because of the way that the digitization and miniaturization curve works. We're going to end up with not much on the device line, but we're still going to end up with masses of computing storage. But even those are becoming, kind of, with quantum computing, they're becoming more efficient. That you can have the same building in 10 years' time having so much, you're almost kind of keeping up with the times because of quantum computing and these advances in storage and so on. So that, do you think, have you kind of been looking at whether these trends are going to get exponentially worse, or whether they're going to kind of start, starting to top out?
I think so. I haven't looked at them very much, I'll be honest. So my comments, I suppose, are from a more of almost a layman's view to some extent. But of course, I keep up with the news. I know what's going on, more or less. I think I'm always wary, or not always. I've come to be wary when I hear things like, "Oh, this new technology is gonna solve it." Right. Because it might be that something solves something, but for example, one of the problems I find with these things, again, I love this stuff, but at the same time, what happens with everything becoming digitized, like you mentioned, for example, driving to the store to buy a vinyl or a cassette tape, that doesn't happen anymore. What we've lost in the process is the visibility of where the stuff is. It's like it's not in my backyard anymore, right? I'm not paying for the cost of driving to the store. I'm not having to dispose of the packaging. But that doesn't mean the packaging isn't there, right? It's just in a different way. It's probably in a different country. It's a massive data center that's being powered by what? Depending on where it is might be being powered by very unrenewable sources. It's a bit like recycling. In a lot of places, good recycling programs have actually encouraged more consumption, because you think, oh, well, it's just being recycled, so I can buy more stuff, get more stuff delivered, more packaging. It's fine because I'm recycling it, and that actually is, I think, great for the recycling effort, but wrong for the mindset, or unproductive for the mindset of the person buying the stuff. And it's this sort of problem, right? It's like, well, if you can store more stuff in a smaller space, what is likely to happen is that you don't actually use less space, you just have more junk. And you're still using the same amount of space and energy. It's a kind of a maybe not a very positive thought, but it's what tends to happen.
Yeah, like, it's interesting because this show's called SaaS on the Street, and we look at software as a service companies. And one of the, I'm going to give you some time to ask me some questions in a moment, but I just close on this whole chapter with this thought: is that one of the things with data centers is that by their very nature, we don't see them because they're geographically dispersed. They're in kind of hidden locations. The worst mistake you can do with security for a SaaS product or a data center or any kind of storage is give information out that might lead someone to know where that data is stored, because then you've got a new level of vulnerability because up until then it's obfuscated and you have no idea where your data is deliberately.
Yeah.
So these things are hidden from sight. They are a bit like landfills, not really kind of mountains of crap in front of
in a way, yeah.
Let's go for a tourist walk around the landfill.
Yeah.
So they're hidden from sight strategically and for security reasons, and nobody knows what the hell's going on with them. Okay, what's a question that you want to ask me?
Well, I'll switch topics a little bit, but I saw that you've done some work in AI space, right? And I don't know much about it. I have a bit of an aversion to it because when I was doing a different kind of work, I was just seeing so many pitches about AI this and AI that without any kind of tangible benefit that I could see, at least. And I was curious to hear like some good stories, like genuinely good stories where there's some really kind of tricky problem that without some kind of AI kind of SaaS solution, we maybe wouldn't have had such a good answer at the moment. If there's something that pops to mind.
Yeah, there's in the NHS in Lothian in Scotland. There's been if you Google baby talk, because you've got a 10-month baby, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So if you Google baby talk at NHS Lothian since the last 10 years, there's a research project started by the co-founders of ARIA, as a company called Data to Text back then, and they were based at the University of Aberdeen. And one of the very first sort of proof points of this new scientific field called natural language generation was to take the raw data coming off, that's the time series data that's coming off a premature baby that's in a neonatal unit in an incubator. It's got they got something measuring the belly button, the core temperature, a little clip on the finger measuring the peripheral temperature, heart rate, oxygen levels, about 6 different measures all streaming off. And that's why you go into the hospital and you see the printouts going. So the doctors or the nurses are coming and they're just going through screeds of paper, which are graphs, looking for blips, anomalies, trying to find the story in the data, because they weren't in the room the whole time, because they've got other patients, other babies in other incubators and so on. So this software, it's called the ARIA NLG engine, and it basically is kind of like consciousness sitting in the data. I've been trying to find a good way to talk about it, but I think basically it's making the data kind of conscious in a way. And what I mean by that is that raw time series data gets kind of sifted for junk. Like, a flat line doesn't mean that the baby's dead on the pulse, because there's still other stuff coming through, and obviously the sensor has slipped off the pulse, right? So it doesn't go, the baby died at 2:00, right?
Right. Okay.
So it's taking out the junk in the data, and it's finding the story, and it basically takes. Actually, I'll show you this here. This is kind of one of my favorite things to show people. Hang on. Just looking for the right. Wonder if I can do it off my. I should be able to do this. Okay, cool. I'm just trying to see whether I can share it with you.
Yeah.
No, I can't do it. I have a little glitch. All this data is coming in, and then it gets broken into kind of miniature bits of information. What I mean by that is like heart rate up, blood pressure down. It's a little just molecules of, they're called messages. And then that's a repository there. And then the next stage of the process is, who wants to know what about this data? So you wake up and, at 6 a.m., you want to know, well, what's happened? What's your child's name?
Peter.
Peter,
yeah.
Yeah. So you go, well, we're not at the hospital. What's happened with Peter overnight? First thing you do when you wake up. So you can be told, well, Peter slept soundly. He was given ventilation at 2 a.m., but ventilation is normal. We often do this, and this is why we provide ventilation.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next morning when you wake up, they might say Peter's given ventilation at 3, but they won't explain it the second time, because you've already been explained why ventilation is important.
Mm-hmm.
And Nurse Johnson was looking after your baby last night. Oh, Nurse Johnson, that's great. So so through interviewing parents, the software, the research, the people that built the software, my colleagues, discovered what it was that they weren't being provided by the hospital system, like no updates, have to ring the hospital, the nurse isn't on duty. Actually, I would like to know who, when they tell me who looked after Peter last night, that makes a massive difference. So this software is more empathic than the human trying to rush around and give everybody the right updates. But more than that, if a nurse is going off shift, I don't know if you've seen medical or have you worked in medical software at all to do with?
No, I haven't.
Okay,
not an area I've worked in.
So I was in Houston at a cardiology ward where they do 40 heart surgeries a day, just in and out of
production line.
Oh my gosh. And then they showed me the software for the patient records. It was kind of like a Salesforce record that just went for like.
Oh well, I've seen what they look like. I've seen some of the NHS ones when you sat with a doctor or a midwife. Going through all the.
Yeah.
So it's like Windows 95 kind of UI.
Yeah, that's right.
Often.
That's right. And so what's the important bit? Oh, it's on record number 98. That sentence that I wrote is the critical bit.
Yeah.
So what the software does, it gets back to the clinical stories, which is the way. So the way nurses hand over to each other is the way they used to do it before computerization. This is what's going on with this baby, this baby, this baby, this baby. So the software does the same thing. It writes a clinical story about what's happened in the last 8 hours.
Yeah.
So it can be passed to the nurses. And then the third audience is the doctors that have to run in at 2 a.m. and it could just be, blood pressure is rising. That's enough. That tells a doctor what's going on with this data, right? It doesn't need to go through screeds of stuff, just those words. So it's all the power of language. So that's what natural language does, natural language generation.
Okay, that's a pretty cool example. And one that's close to home as well, because we're just a couple of hours away from Lothian NHS. So or NHS?
Yeah, no, I'm 5 years out of the mix, so don't quote me on what they're using now.
I won't, but still, yeah.
It was a massive breakthrough, but it's all written up as a research project called Baby Talk, so you can Google that and look at it. Well, I think we're at time. I know that you've got the pitter-patter of little feet to deal with.
More like the stomp of
the stomp of little feet.
Yeah.
Hey, it's been great. Thank you, Richard. I've really enjoyed the discussion, and
thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, maybe when you've got your software your software startup or business, you want to come on, we'll have a session on that. Just give me a shout. It'd be great to have you back.
Yeah, sounds great. That's something I'll definitely do for sure. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Take care.
Cheers. Bye for now.
Bye.